This episode of the Chris Johnston Show is brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, built for the fastest game on ice. With player props and live betting, every shift, every shot, every save gives you options to get in on the game with DraftKings Sportsbook. The World Juniors comes to an end on Monday. Canada set at minus 265 on the money line, favored to beat Finland in the bronze medal game. Sweden favored to beat Czechia in the gold medal game. Moneyline set at minus 125 for Sweden. New customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code SDPN. That's code SDPN to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, call 8887-897777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois, 21 plus in most states, void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
A really curious time in the nation's capital in Ottawa, CJ. We should probably review the last, it feels like 24 hours at this point. Linus Ullmark, we know, has still been away from the team. There's been speculation. Yes, that's also part of this too.
That's weird in itself.
It is very weird in itself. You're absolutely right, CJ. But rumors spreading the internet about why he's been absent from the team, prompting a statement from the Ottawa Senators about him not being with the team. Then after that, an abysmal performance against the Colorado Avalanche, in which they start a young goalie, for second consecutive night, pull him after 3 goals, put in their backup, and even before we get to the third period, word comes out that a PTO has been signed by James Reimer, and then the game continues, and then they put back in said goalie they started. I think it's one of the weirdest days this team has ever endured.
You know, the thing that I can't get my mind around fully is why they put out the statement they did. Because I'll tell you right now, we wouldn't be talking about this on our podcast if there was no statement. Because, you know, I recognize it's a tough spot. I guess there's these rumors flying around. Like, to be honest, I don't live that online, so I didn't even see a lot of this stuff. Like, full transparency, I don't even really know, like, did it come from anyone reputable? I actually don't know that. Like, it's just fans or random bot accounts or what?
When I was looking out online, there was a random Twitter account that started spreading these rumors.
What did the rumors say?
I mean, I essentially, I don't know if we want to get into the specifics of those rumors. I don't know if we want to get into that close of that detail, but essentially they were spreading this rumor about Linus Ullmark and something in his personal life that may have also affected the rest of this team. And they kept spreading that to different people online. Like, it was pretty crazy to see at the speed at which they were doing it, and to see that the account had started that day on the Thursday, and then by the end of the night it was shut down.
Wow. Yeah, see, like, I honestly didn't know all that, but what the team statement does is it makes you go like, oh, what rumors am I missing here? And it makes you look at it. Not to mention the way it was worded. I mean, was very unprofessional. Honestly, it sounds like a 12-year-old wrote it or something. Like, and I get it. I think they were trying to use strong language to convey how angry they are and to convey how, you know, they're not substantiating those rumors. I mean, look, they're in a lose-lose position. I recognize that this can be a very tough job of being a professional athlete, living your life in public. You know, when things happen, and, you know, especially in the social media world, there's a lot of commentary out there, right? Like, I think it's not apples to apples, but like, I think a lot of Mitch Marner's rough ride in Toronto, quite honestly, was more about social media than the working media, than what we call the paid media or the traditional media, whatever you want to call it. Like, I don't think that there wasn't a slew of columns saying, get this guy out of town, but there was a lot of hate online, right? And obviously that affected him and members of his family and rightfully so, and this is a similar case where this starts online and it's obviously, it sounds like it's a very malicious type of rumor if it is untrue, which the Sens say it is. I don't have no idea. Like, I'm not certainly sitting here trying to give it any more life, but I understand that you want to defend your player. You want to scream it down, but I think if anything else, you just breathe a whole bunch of oxygen into this story. And you've created a situation now where I almost feel like Linus Ullmark at some point in time when he's back with the team, and working his way to playing again, like he's going to have to address this in some way. Whereas I think if you just let it be an internet rumor, again, people like you and I wouldn't be talking about it. You wouldn't hear Darren Dreger talking about it on TSN or anyone else in the hockey world. So it's, of all the things, like, I could understand a tough road trip. I mean, the Sens are a team. If we're just talking about the hockey, they haven't had a save all year, right? And that's what it feels like. I mean, that might be unfair. I know Ullmark did have a decent stretch there, but, it's been a very up and down season. The crease, I think that's a big point of explanation why they are where they are in the standings. Tough back to back with Utah and Colorado. I mean, yeah, they took it on the nose in Colorado, but a lot of teams have gone into that building and had a tough time. In fact, I talked to a player that played a road game in Colorado recently, and I can't remember what they were down in his team. They were down 3 or 4-1 at one point in the game, and he told me like they got into the dressing room to intermission, and like it could be 12-1. Like, did we even touch the puck? Like the Avalanche, let's face it, they're the best team in the league by now. So like, my point is, losing in bad fashion, like that happens, right? We saw a 9-0 loss the other night by the Devils on Long Island. Like that happens in the course of business. But all this other stuff, I mean, what a spot the organization's in. They have to really hope Reimer has some game. He played at the Spengler Cup for Canada, so he's played in some pro level games at least in the last month. But he did have that PTO with the Maple Leafs in training camp, and they ultimately elected not to sign him just because I think that he wasn't up to a level that they were comfortable with. So it's a bit of a home run gamble at this point in time. Laurent Boissois was another player that was out there, was on the trade board briefly that went out on the Athletic, but got traded to San Jose yesterday as part of this. So, there aren't a bevy of other options of goaltenders. And so, man, I feel like I'm talking in circles. There's all kinds of ground covered there, but I don't really know what to say about the Senators. It's just a very strange 24 hours for that organization.
I think so too. I can understand maybe just after the first couple minutes of the start of the show, maybe saying it's one of the most embarrassing days, maybe a little strong. I do think it's just a super weird day. And also, the reason why we think this statement is so weird, because I realize I haven't read it in full, and I won't read it in full here, but here's the one part.
I think if anyone hasn't seen it, please do. If you have it there, please read it in full, and then I'll just sit here and shut up. But I can't believe this was put out as it's worded.
Our organization was extremely disappointed to read the completely fabricated and false stories that are spreading around social media about our hockey club. Linus is away from our team for personal reasons, and he has the entire organization's support. We ask that people respect his privacy, but clearly that request was not heard by the lowest forms of trolls and sick people who scour the internet. We are disgusted that outside forces are attempting to disrupt our hockey club. This statement will put an end to the ridiculous speculation that has spread online. And that is from Steve Staios, the president of hockey operations and general manager of the Ottawa Senators. Look, I can understand you wanting to feel angry and you wanting to not have anyone go at your guy on social media the way people have. But I just think this sort of legitimizes some of the talk that's been out there about him when they could have just left this alone and other teams would have just left this alone.
Yeah, I'll go back to the point. We would not be talking about this if that statement didn't go out. Just full stop. Do you know how many rumors I hear in the course of day-to-day business about all kinds of stuff? And so many of them I would never know if it's true. And I will say, just personally, the way I've always approached this, I don't dig in when someone leaves a team for personal reasons and they ask for that level of privacy. I never pick up the phone and call their agent or call someone I know and be like, hey, what's really going on here? We had this situation in Toronto with Joseph Woll at the start of the season and it got a little difficult because the Leafs had poor goaltending performances early on. I was doing radio hits pretty frequently in the market in Toronto at the start of the year, and they'd be like, "What's going on with Wall? When's he coming back?" And I was like, I don't know. I don't know the nature of what he's dealing with. He ended up coming back. In his case, he elected not to address, his absence other than to say he appreciated the support. And, he was just focused on returning to the team. And look, he's played pretty well and life moved along. I still don't know what exactly was going on there. And I don't think it's my business or necessarily fans' business or the public's business. And knowing that, I would say the same for Ullmark. I wasn't out there. I guess my point is a lot of rumors happen and they never get substantiated and just time goes along. And so I think the Sens will look back and probably regret that statement. I don't know what led to it. To be honest, maybe they were getting a bunch of calls for people asking for comment and they, to be fair, these things don't just happen in a vacuum. They might have been responding to their own market. So, I got to be careful not being too hard on them, but you can't win, unfortunately. That's why it's frustrating. We all live in this world too, right? And I just can't imagine being truly famous in it. I mean, you and I have some notoriety due to our jobs, but it's not anywhere near the level of, being one of the players. And so there's just a lot of crap out there. And, I think it's easier being my age, if I'm being serious. I know you hate when I bring up my age, but I really don't pay attention to it. I don't read comments on stories, for example. I don't look at Reddit. I don't look at a lot of things where people might be commenting on our podcast or whatever maybe I say on TV or what I write. I live blissfully ignorant of this world, but younger people, I get it. They're way more online. They're way more aware and they're way more dialed into this stuff, and it affects their ability to live their life while doing a job in public. I mean, it's got to be tough.
One last thing about the Ottawa Senators before I move on here, because we did spend a lot of time on the statement. What do you think about where they're at now, where they've lost 3 in a row? James Reimer is there on a PTO. I think this is a situation that they should have resolved a lot sooner with having some kind of veteran presence because the goaltending was not there. But this is a team that is starting to lose a bit of ground in terms of making a case to make the playoffs.
They are, but I will say this. Look at this season, man. The Atlantic Division has 8 teams that are legit have a chance to make the playoffs. All 8 teams. Nobody's rebuilding. Nobody's focused on the future. And I just think this season, we've seen it in a number of different cities with the ups and downs. They're riding a pretty big down right now. It's hard to frame it as positive. But when I look at the Senators, quite honestly, and peek at some of the underlying numbers, and I just think that's still a good team. I do think getting some stability in net could make or break whether they make the playoffs or not. And they'll hope that Reimer can patch it up for a little while here. And let's see if that works or doesn't. Maybe there's another move to be made, but I'm not writing this team off by any means. There's half a season to go or a little bit less. And to me, they're still good enough as constructed, but they badly need someone to come in there and make a few saves. And look, Reimer last year was not spectacular, but he gave the Sabres in particular some pretty good hockey. I know he was in Anaheim briefly for a time too when they claimed him on waivers. He was steady, and I feel like the Sens probably just need steady. They would take spectacular, of course, but if they get steady goaltending from someone, and Milan has done that in the past too. It could be him. I'm not sure how this is all going to go down, but way too soon to say that they should be waving a white flag or that their season's done. I just think there's more twists and turns in a lot of cities still to go in this season.
We're essentially on the same page. The only other thing I'll add is if James Reimer is the one to steady the Ottawa Senators season, considering the teams that he's played for in the past, I would get some humor out of that. Obviously, I'm alluding to the fact that he used to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. Let's move on from the Ottawa Senators fact, here.
When he emerged, because this is a story time with Uncle CJ, but when James Reimer emerged, he saved the Leaf season the one year, almost single-handedly. They were kind of going nowhere. He was a 4th-round pick, I want to say, so he wasn't like a player. He wasn't a prospect with a lot of attention on him, and they got into a goaltending crisis with injuries and the like, and they started him actually a game in Ottawa was his first start, if I'm not mistaken. I think he might have come in relief against the Atlanta Thrashers in a game, but his first start, if I got this correct, was in Ottawa, and I believe he had a shutout. Or whatever. And he went on a crazy run where he played almost the entire second half of the season. The Leafs kind of got back in the playoff race. They didn't make the playoffs that year. but he's done it before, is all I'm saying. I know that was a long time ago. He's made 500 starts, between those points, but it all started for him. I know kind of where he got Leafs fans excited was a game in Ottawa. So maybe in a weird way, it's like a full circle moment coming for him here.
And that was on January 1st, 2011. So
there you go.
Almost 15 years to the day, sort of. Anyway, let's get to your trade
good story
board.
idea for you, Julian. You can maybe some kind of clapback story in that.
I'm going to keep that in mind. Let's get to your trade board. Great job, as always, by the way, rounding out some of the hotter names that could be dealt ahead of the trade deadline. Your top 5, Kiefer Sherwood, Andrew Mangiapane, Rasmus Andersson, Blake Coleman, and Artemi Panarin. What are you hearing?
It's a mixed bag of players in there, isn't it? I mean, you got a superstar in Panarin who, has a no move clause, and he's only on the board at this point. It sounds weird to start at number 5, but I did have a real debate internally. Do I put him at number 1? And the reason I didn't is because I don't think the Rangers have made the decision to sell just yet. But let's face it, they've had a tough week here, right? They lost Fox. They lost a goaltender. Two of their best players, Shesterkin. Sorry, I just was drawing a blank. And, they're recognizing that they're old and slow and probably headed in the wrong direction right now. And that maybe they need some kind of little reboot. And if you're going to do a reboot, Panarin is a pending UFA. And the thing about Panarin, Julian, he's led the Rangers in scoring all 7 years since he signed there as a free agent, right? So he remains a lead offensive player. He's, I think primarily a playmaker, but he's also, had some pretty big goal scoring seasons of late. Even at his age, he's going to get paid. Like his next contract is going to be a big one. I'm not convinced it's coming in with the Rangers. And so I think that we are entering the territory where the conditions are there, where that's a player that could be moved by March 6th. That's why he's on the board. He's not at number 1 because I don't think they're pushing it, but it's definitely possible. Who is at number 1? Kiefer Sherwood. That's because the Canucks have been open for business. As we know, they already made the Quinn Hughes trade prior to Christmas time. He's attracted a lot of attention, including from the Rangers, one of the teams, that has expressed interest in him. I think Dallas likes the idea of Sherwood. He's been connected to the San Jose Sharks. He's intriguing on a couple levels, Sherwood. What stands out, obviously, he's having a great season, pushing 20 goals already. Very physical player, unique kind of skill set, the sort of thing I think playoff teams are looking for. But he's also only $1.5 million right now on the cap. And so for teams that are truly contenders, that are obviously going to be doing the tango dance, the conga dance, trying to get under that cap ceiling, like he's an ideal fit on a couple levels there. I think the Canucks would love to get a first rounder for him. We'll see if they are able to. It might end up being a second rounder. But he's someone I think could be moved quickly. Mangiapane, no surprise. I mean, he's, just hasn't been a fit for him in Edmonton. He's been a frequent scratch of late. His name is circulated pretty prevalently. I think the Oilers would love to get him a fresh look and obviously, see what they can do. The depth of that team has been under a lot of scrutiny between him and Trent Frederick, who's in the first season of an 8-year deal, both being scratched for the same game this week. Not a good situation. Mangiapane also has a no movement clause. You see a trend here, right? I mean, it's hard. It is hard enough to make trades in this league. And I know some people rag on GMs for using that as an excuse, but they've given out no movement clauses like candy across the NHL. And that really does complicate making deals. And I do think Mangiapane is going to be flexible. Like he recognizes the need for a fresh start too. So it's not a good situation on his end. I'm not saying he's blocking deals by any stretch, but I do think it just makes it a little bit tricky. And then you go Anderson and Coleman, the two players in Calgary. I mean, I think at some point in time, the Flames are going to move into some kind of mini sell mode here. I recognize the West, like the playoff race, if we can call it a race. It's like a playoff crawl at the bottom in the Western Conference for the wild card spots. But the Flames technically, if you want to stretch your mind, are kind of in that mix still. But let's be real. I think that's not a team could get into a playoff series and expect to have any success against a Colorado, for example, or some of the teams at the top of the conference. Anderson is probably the most obvious UFA that will be moved, I'd say, at this point in time. There are others around the league. I still think his market will take some time to develop in terms of getting closer to that trade deadline, probably on the other side of the Olympics before we see him actually traded. But, he's got to be high on the board because of the appeal that he has for contending clubs. And Blake Coleman, it's interesting because I think the Flames have probably got the most calls on him of any of their players. He's actually signed through next season, but, we've seen he was a huge part of the success when Tampa went back to back with their cup wins. Wouldn't it all be surprising, to be honest, just knowing the way the Lightning operate, if they circle back on a guy like Blake Coleman? Like, we've seen them bring back Yanni Gourde and Ryan McDonough to name too. Mm-hmm. I could see a fit from there, but, he's also a Dallas area guy. I think that the teams that are and plays quick, right? He's 200-foot player. Like his underlying numbers remain really strong, could contribute a bit of offense. That's our top 5 right now. But I will say, since the previous iteration of the board, which was, somewhere around December 10th or so, we have actually seen a number of trades. 5 guys came off the second board I did, 3 of them because they were traded, 2 more, Dvorak and Alex Wenberg because they got extensions. Lo and behold, we put this board up, I guess it was Thursday morning. I'm a little turned around here because I'm in Milan, Italy right now, and the days are kind of crashing together in my head. But we put this board up, and then hours later, you already see the deal for the goaltender Boissois to San Jose. He was listed on the board. So, it's a fun time of year because the action is, and the talks are picking up around the league.
One other player I want to mention, I know we mentioned 2 other Calgary Flames, but Nazem Kadri's a little further down on the list too, but some reports with his situation coming out as well. Curious about why you have him a little lower on your list.
Well, I don't think the Flames are inclined to move him, for starters. I do think if he gets moved, I think it's going to have to be either some combination of another team being very forceful and trying to get him, or him or his agent going to the Flames management saying, look, it's time. He really likes it in Calgary. This isn't a case where Kadri wants out, and he's got still a number of years left on his contract, but let's face it, his best days may be behind him. He's still a pretty impactful player, and there's not a lot of centers on this board. There's a few, and some of the ones mentioned, I have a Robert Thomas say, around 11. I don't know how likely it is someone like that is actually moved. I mean, his name is out there, so he's on the board because he could be had if someone's willing to pony up a major price to the Blues. But, there's just not a lot of center depth and help out there. And so, Kadri's lower because I think the odds are a little less likely he's dealt than St. Anderson or Coleman, but he's got to be on there because he's an option that I think could come into play here in the next, 7-8 weeks.
Okay. Anything else you want to mention about the big board before we move on? Any expectations about a potential mini trade deadline? Anyone else on the list who we should also look out for, even if they're not in the top 5?
I would say, the Winnipeg Jets obviously lost 11 in a row now and have plummeted to the bottom of the league. A couple of their players are now on the board. I had Luke Shen in the top 10. Anyone who follows hockey knows what Luke Shen's all about. He's been around a long time, right shot defenseman, meat and potatoes kind of player, high character guy. Also have Logan Stanley a little lower on the board, and just because I don't know if he ends up signing an extension. The Jets have invested a lot in terms of time and energy into his development, and he's popped this year for what he is. I mean, 6'7" defenseman, willing to drop the gloves every once in a while. He's been in a few fights this year, can play physically. He's popped for 7 goals this season, which is not a part of his game offensively that he's brought in the past. And I think he's just become a steadier, better player. I think he's in line. He'll probably get a surprising contract, Julian, if on his next deal, and he's a pending UFA. So there's a decision that the Jets are going to have to face. I think some point in the next few weeks, my expectation is there'll be internal meetings, the way a lot of teams are doing sort of scouting meetings, and the Jets are going to commit to what their short and longer term goals are. And so, and the Jets have a number of players that aren't even on the board that I think could be candidates to be moved, Julian. Veteran guys up front, Niederreiter, Nemesnikov, Gustav Nyquist. I mean, we'll see how things develop there. They haven't made the decision to sell, but, based on how things are going, it's not unfair for us to project that they could become a seller. Another name that I would want to highlight that made a new appearance on this board is Jesperi Kotkaniemi in Carolina. He's a player a little like Mangiapane in a sense, although different because he's younger and he's obviously been in Carolina for a while, but he's found himself out of the regular rotation and been scratched a bit lately. And his is a name that I've heard increasingly around the league. And, while his offensive impacts have really dropped off this year, I still think because of his age, and the fact he plays center, that he's an asset. I think he's a player that we could see, find his way elsewhere at some point in time here. So, that's kind of my take on the board, but it's nice. There's lots of new blood on there for those that are inclined to enjoy these things. And I do think it's a sign that more conversations are starting to happen around the league. I think Vancouver could be the place to watch most for the next shoe to drop, because there's a lot of interest around their players.
Great job as always, and you can check out that list at The Athletic. CJ, you mentioned it. You're in Milan, so of course we have to ask for another update when it comes to that Olympic rink for the men's and women's hockey tournament in February. What's the latest?
Boots on the ground, fella. They're having a test event here this weekend, and I'm going to be in the building. They're going to play 7 games, so that's what's scheduled right now between Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. The goal here is obvious. I mean, I'm going to actually get to lay with my own eyes. I'm not relying on reporting and external sources for what is and isn't happening inside this arena. We'll be there in a couple hours time from when we're recording for the first time. And then, the secondary thing that I'm here to watch really is, what does this ice look like? Can it hold up playing that many games? These are Italian professional games, so it's obviously not at the level of NHL hockey, but it is professional men's players that'll be playing these games. And most importantly, it mimics the schedule that you're going to see at the games, where there's many days at the main rink here in Milan where there'll be 3 games a day. And they have to test where the ice is at and how it can hold up under those conditions. So, I can't give you much of an update other than to say, everyone is pretty confident they're going to be able to pull off this tournament at this point. But it's sort of like, how bad is it going to be with the rink? Like, it's not going to be perfect. That much I can guarantee you. That we can safely report this is not going to be what you would expect for a tournament of this caliber, just in terms of the venue. But I'm here to sort of get a look at it with my own eyes, talk to the people, talk to the players that play in these games, and write some stories for The Athletic. So by our next show, I'll have a full breakdown of what it looks like, what it felt like, what my takeaways are. The one concern I've heard heading in is that this practice rink might not get finished. And the reason that's significant is because the main rink is obviously due to host games between the men's and women's tournaments. It's busy, right? And so there is at least a mild level of concern. This is coming from the federations, that the teams might not even be able to practice while they're here if this practice rink doesn't get done. And so, Hockey Canada actually went to scout a rink in Switzerland. Switzerland isn't too far. We're in the northern part of Italy, Milan, just to have a backup option if they ever needed a practice. Now, the odds of them having to use that, I don't know how likely it is. Are they really going to bus an hour and a half to go to have a practice to bus back? I mean, you can't rule it out. But that just lets you know where we're at. And I'll give you a full update on our next show. I can't wait to actually lay eyes on this place and to see what state it's in when I get there later tonight.
Me either. I can't wait to hear what you've got to say. Before we let you enjoy the sights and sounds of Italy, do you have a stick tap before we get out of here?
I didn't even arrive with one.
That's all good. I can hold up one for both of us. Earlier this week, we had a wild night where Trevor Zegras, Cutter Gauthier, Logan Stankoven, and Mikko Rantanen all got to score revenge goals against their former team on Tuesday night. So I know these things can happen on any given night, but I don't know how many times we see it where 4 different guys are able to get revenge on their former teams, particularly Trevor Zegras, who did the really cold phone celebration, which basically signified how long that phone call was from Anaheim when they told him he was getting traded to Philadelphia. He even said as much when he got interviewed by Scotty Hartnell. So I really enjoyed that. And I will give my stick tap to those 4 gentlemen. And since it's 4 people, that should be enough for both of us to cover.
And we can add Scott Lawton. He had a revenge goal shorthanded in Philadelphia on Thursday night, too. So revenge has been the name of the game this week around the NHL. It's been fun. The games are great, and there's a lot going on. And I'm going to miss the next few days of games, essentially, because I'm in Europe. But I'll be watching Italian League games at the Olympic site. Boots on the ground. It's been cool to be here, see some of the signage around the city, and we'll get an update on that for our next show.
Do you even know any Italian?
Grazie mille.
Hey, that's pretty
That's
good.
all I got. Buongiorno.
Get your questions. Buongiorno's good too. Get your questions in for Ask CJ. We'll get to that on our next edition of the CJ Show. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. Great work as always, CJ, and we'll talk to you all next week. Peace.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.